All right, an interesting report coming out of the Heritage Foundation, running on Breitbart. Biden's green climate agenda is making our military reliant on China, or it could, or there's a risk. So let's talk about that with North Dakota Senator Mr. Kevin Cramer. Senator Cramer, welcome back to the show. I don't know if you had a chance to see this, but I know you know a lot about the main issue here is the mismanagement of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which they have knocked down. The Bidens have sold off a third, 40% nearly. And that is something that we might desperately need if worse came to worse and we were in some conflagration, and that China was involved in that on the other side, as undoubtedly any war would be. So that was the first point that they talked about, the mismanagement of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And Senator, one hears that they're going to do it again. The Bidens are going to take more out of that stock, and in order to artificially depress gasoline prices, a few days or weeks before the election. And it's ruining our military readiness. What do you make of it, sir?
Well, it's also, Larry, a direct violation of the point of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Strategic and reserve, important, right? This is not an emergency. High gas prices are, frankly, an outcome of Biden administration policies, and it's a tragedy. And it's, by the way, it's the stickiest part of this. But what Heritage did is they drilled it right down to the warfighter themselves. The inability to draw on those reserves just imagine a major conflict with China far, far away in the Pacific, moving big weapons systems, moving big ships, moving a lot of personnel, long distances is going to require a lot of fuel and a lot of energy, unless, of course, they're going to, equip Air Force One and B-21s with solar panels. I don't think so. And by the way, even if they did and they could, solar panels come from where? China. Electric vehicles come from where? China. The entire supply chain comes from China, other than, of course, uranium for nuclear power, that comes from Russia. And let's not forget, Larry, while we're on this roll, that China gets its oil at a discount from who? Iran. Our former adversaries are our current adversaries, except now they're all allies because we're the common enemy. So I think Heritage, they did an excellent job in drilling down not just to the economic and the supply chain, but to the literal need for strategic reserves at a time when the Biden administration has brought them down. At this point, Larry, I think to a 40-year low. And to your point, the strategy they're dealing with now is a campaign strategy because they want to bring the price of fuel down domestically, and they're going to use the strategic reserve to do it.
Yeah, it's just cheap politics, that's all. But it's jeopardizing our national security as well as our energy security. The other point, Senator, is that Heritage makes here is, like it or not, the U.S. military is powered by fossil fuels. And so there's a certain insanity to trying to put an end to fossil fuels or cut back fossil fuels or curtail future drilling and production and transportation of fossil fuels, because that's what our military uses. So in effect, all this Green New Deal stuff is doing is running against the military. And you know what? We just said it earlier in the show, and they are defunding the military in the first place. At the end of the 10-year CBO window, as you may know, Senator Cramer, the defense spending is only going to be 2.8% of GDP. That is the lowest, and you have to go way back. That is basically the lowest we've had in the whole post-war period. So no fossil fuels and no money for defense. How about that?
Well, for sure. I'm on the Armed Services Committee. We just marked up our National Defense Authorization Act last week out of the committee. Fortunately, Republicans with a couple of Democrats were able to raise that top line number by $25 billion. Otherwise, we're looking at a reduction, Larry, an actual reduction in military spending going forward at a time when the world is on fire, in case people haven't noticed. And again, China being the big problem, but Iran, North Korea, Russia, all significant problems for us. And we're reducing as a percentage of our GDP the amount we're spending on preparing for the big fight in the Pacific, which we hope will never happen. But the best way to ensure it doesn't happen is to produce more energy, more fossil fuels, be the provider of choice to the world, while at the same time having a strategic petroleum reserve that's readily available, that's adequate to the task, and then having the infrastructure to move all of that to where it needs to go. And doing that, Larry, will bring down the price. It'll bring down inflation for everybody. Yes. And then we don't have to put solar panels on bombers and hope that they fly.
Well, that's right, which is quite a sight. Anyway, Senator Kevin Cramer, thank you, sir. We appreciate it.